Sponsored by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast rentals in Brooklyn, New York. To find out more, visit their website, jmrny.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and recently I had the opportunity to moderate a Katra film series Alumni Spotlight, which featured two gentlemen, both of whom have been on the show before, Geoffrey Guerrero, who is the executive director of Katra Film Series, and John Campbell, who is the executive producer and writer of the documentary The Infamous Future. Both of their episodes, you can find their episodes on the website. And this is an interesting conference. In this conference, we talked about film festival strategies and also about the importance of telling the stories of people of color in this day and age. So here is a portion of that talk.
Hey.
Welcome, guys.
Hey, man, how's it going?
It's nice to see you guys again.
Good to see you too. It's been a while. I think it's been close to a year since I've seen you, Jason.
It feels like it. It feels like it's been forever. But we got a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to do it. So let's get into it. So first of all, how are you guys dealing? New York City, we're just in like phase two of the COVID pandemic. So are you still producing stuff, or like how's it going for everybody?
For me, it's still been very busy. I kind of took advantage of the time, knowing that it would slow some things down, so I could speed some things up, right? So I've been able to get a few deals in negotiations. I've been able to work on a few development ideas and projects. The main thing that I haven't been doing is traveling, and I'm normally traveling every week somewhere, and I haven't traveled since March 9th. So that's been very interesting. But in terms of the isolation, I love being where I am. You know, there's trees everywhere. I'm in the woods, so I'm kind of okay. And I live upstate New York, so it's different than it would be in New York City. Things are a bit more spaced out. We've not had many cases. We haven't had 500 cases in the whole of Columbia County, so it's not bad. It's not bad up there, but still busy. There have been moments where, you kind of say, okay, what do I do now? But I try to keep myself busy.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of operations in general. One of the things we're going to talk about is Film Fest and the film festival circuit. Geoffrey, of course, you've been running Contra Film Series, and you guys just went virtual last month, which was, I thought it was done really well that you guys did it on Footprint. You'll probably, I'm assuming, have to do that again until, we're kind of back in the full swing. But sort of like, give me like a state of the union on festivals and film festival strategy in the age of COVID.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, we're going virtual. We have no choice. All the theaters are shut down in New York City. As much as we'd love to be there and support filmmakers like John, who we've had the honor to host last year, took home the Best Documentary Award. It's been very hard. A lot of challenges, a lot of improvisation, figuring out what to do next, having conversations with a lot of people. Footprint was great. Thanks to you, we were able to connect with the great team over there at Footprint, and they're hosting us for the summer series in August. We have a lot of great films. There are a lot of great films that were submitted to us, and we want to give them a space and a place to showcase their work and network with other like-minded folks. So we're really happy to continue moving forward, doing it virtually, and hopefully be back in a theater in the near future.
For you, John, like, what do you do now in terms of like film festival strategy? Like, are you looking, because I know you have a new feature that you've been working on, and I don't know where that is. We'll talk about that in a bit. But like, what what did I don't know either you, Geoffrey or John, like what advice do you give people in terms of, do you submit to things now? Do you look for virtual? Is virtual right for everybody? Like what works?
I think for me, there's going to be some people who feel like, well, it's no point me submitting because I'm not going, or they may not have the film festival. And film festivals, to me, are kind of learning the new way. So I feel like if you submit, they may end up doing a virtual film festival, but at least you're in the running and you still have a great chance, and probably a better chance than before, right? When everyone's making travel plans and everything, people aren't sure, so people aren't submitting. So it may give you an even stronger chance to even be selected. I think what Jeff did was one of the best things. I watched some of the screenings, and I thought it was so well executed. And that's also interesting, that I can have my phone in my hand and I can be at a film festival, right? So I kind of liked that idea. So I don't think it stops things altogether. I think you just have to know that those film festivals are making their plans to accommodate the current climate.
Exactly what John said. I mean, it's very important. We're getting some amazing films. Look, we want to be back in a theater. I think every filmmaker wants to get their butts in the seats and see their film on a big screen. But due to the crisis that we have going on, we have to figure out new ways to showcase these films. And doing it virtually has been it's a new way. It's a new way of experiencing film. It's a new way of communicating with other fellow peers. But we're, like John said, there's more opportunities. We're able to showcase more films. So in August, we're expanding it to a 3-day event instead of a 1 or 2 day event as we've been doing the past few years. So we're getting a lot of great works, and we just want to continue to support filmmakers that are doing bold, original, and telling unique stories from perspectives from filmmakers of color, from filmmakers of the LGBTQ plus community, Latino community, Asians. We're really pushing the diversity this year, and there's just a lot of great talent out there from all over the place. I mean, we're trying to showcase as many films as possible.
John, I have to ask you. So, for people who might be unfamiliar, just the film is The Infamous Future, but give us just like a little log line about what the film is. And that will also take us into our next topic, just so we know what we're talking about.
So the infamous future, the word infamous comes from a negative suggestion of something not so good, whether it's you're looking at it as a rebel, or someone that's just not focused, or someone that's doing something bad. And in many ways, and very timely to this time of life, people of color, primarily Black and brown boys, are depicted in this way in society. And I wanted to do a documentary to show the positive messages of Black and brown boys by talking about a school which is Eagle Academy, and what they're doing for these kids, and inspiring their lives. And as we're looking at their lives, we're being inspired, right? So that pretty much sums up, it follows the life of one of the Latino kids and his mother, and the CEO, David Banks. He's the president and CEO of Eagle Academy Foundation, and some of the teachers and principals, and just really giving you a background, but a front row seat to the daily lives and the inspiration that these teachers feel about these kids, and it takes you all the way to graduation. So it's something that I'm very, very proud of, and very happy that we were able to go around the country and out of the country at many film festivals. Now it has a home.
Talked about it. You were on my show, No Rest for the Weekend, and we talked about it on that show. We also reviewed it, I believe, but you can find out more about that on John's episode of No Rest for the Weekend podcast, where we kind of go more in depth about it. It's a great movie, and it's incredibly topical today. I honestly don't think you could have hit the nail harder on the head. You made this story for a particular reason, and I remember the schoolmaster said to you, "I've got the greatest story never told."
Right.
You know, and
Right.
and it's poignant, but it's also a shame that a lot of these stories haven't been told.
Right.
So, do you feel now, especially in the wake of an era where people are protesting on the streets for Black Lives Matter, is it particularly poignant now to tell these stories, and how do you go about doing that?
So I would say to you, the first thing is, it's always a good time to tell your story. I don't think because of the protests or because of the current situations that should change what you've always felt, right? I think what it can do is help those who may not have listened to start listening, right? And so I also think that if you go into a car, you can't just, and I'm talking a car that has a key. You've got to turn the key like 2-3 times, right? Before you hear the engine rev and then it actually starts, right? I'm not necessarily saying or thinking that we are all the way turned, that the car is running and so now we can all go. I think that we might be clicking, right? And I think in that clicking, people are paying attention now to what has been the narrative for a long time. So for me, I told some friends the other day, it's not so much that in the past 4 times that I've been in my car, 2 out of those 4 times I've been followed by the police. They've turned around and come behind me. It's more about the fact that I have to let go of the feeling when they're gone, so that wherever I'm going, I don't bring any frustration into that environment, right? So that I can pretty much just try to, when everyone's saying, "Hi, how are you?" I'm not saying you won't believe what just happened to me, or I'm not frustrated with anyone, or I'm isolating myself. I want to try to be present, so I have to diffuse that. And if that happens to you several times a week or several times a month or several times a year or every time you're in certain environments, it's not just about police. It's about when you walk into a store and you feel paranoid as if someone's watching you and things of that nature. These are all the things that are just systemic in and around the society of our cultures, right? And that's where we've got to pay attention, right? So yes, nationwide, you had the perfect storm. The perfect storm was COVID-19. Now, I guarantee you, if the situation with George Floyd happened when there was no COVID-19, we probably wouldn't be hearing it to this magnitude, because people would be so busy, so into what they're doing in their day, traveling, getting on planes, and all of those things. The world was still, all right? The world had nowhere to go. And in that pivotal time, we all had to pay attention. Whether you were on your phone, it would come up. Whether you were on your tablet, it would come up. Whether you turned on the television, it would come up. Whether you were listening to the radio, it was coming up everywhere you were. So that's why these stories are important. It's just now they're realizing, and when I say they, I mean primarily people who may not have been in those situations, white people, are paying more attention, which is good, to these are the stories we've been trying to tell you, right? These situations with the police is what we've been talking about for decades, because it's not even just about the police. It's also about the unions. It's also about politics, but it's also about control, not just with law enforcement. It's about in our environments where we live, and we've got to understand what the word equality means, right? And be open to giving things up which you may have had control over, because that's not equality if you're in control and I'm trying to do the same thing, but I can't get there, all right? So we have to tell these stories. So for me, I want to be a part of telling stories that celebrates my race, but also talks about the challenges and the frustrations of my race. That's not the only thing that I do, but it's something that's important to me in this industry.
My other question would be, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, you talk about not bringing that sort of energy into a room, kind of thing. But how do you come off in a story? How do you tell a story without it just being an anger monologue, without it being some kind of a lecture, or like, because regardless of what we think we are, we're entertainers. Like, we make entertainment for people, and what we make has to be entertaining on some level. Like, so how do you make it so it's not an eat your vegetables, it's good for you kind of movie, and B, how do you kind of make it palatable so that the message can get across to people who don't look like you?
There's two parts to that, right? There is what you hear, and then there's what you understand, right? So I'm speaking to you and you can hear me, right? And as you can hear me, that could be as far as it goes. The part that really resonates is you understanding what I'm saying, right? That's when it has impact. So you can make a movie, but make sure it's the truth, all right? If it is the truth, you will either hear me or have some understanding to what I'm saying, okay? Have you ever tried to tell someone, no, if you do this and then that, that's how you get that? And they are looking at you like, okay, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, but I don't get it, right? And so you then have to understand, knowing that they do not understand, I may just have to leave it as this is what it is, okay? And maybe in time they'll get it, maybe further down the line, right? So I genuinely feel like you have to just tell the story and be authentic, be truthful about it. I don't think it's relevant to amp up any sensationalism to the truth. The truth will stand on its own, right? So you can try to make it Hollywood and all of those things, but as long as it's the truth, it should come through, and people will learn to understand that, or come to understand it. So I think that kind of, you're going to have people just like in this current situation. A lot of people don't understand a lot of things to do with racism. They don't understand about Confederate flags. They don't understand about control. They don't see that there are inequalities in certain neighborhoods, low income issues, COVID happening to Latinos and Blacks more than it is Caucasians, and why, right? They don't understand that, and they don't think that that's possible because they live somewhere else and they don't see it there, right? So I think part of it is just tell your story, and hopefully, someone will get it, and as they get it, maybe they'll share it. And that's how we help each other. It's not just about me trying to say, you need to understand what I'm saying. It's also about me saying, okay, you may not get this now, but here is something that happened to someone I know, or here is how we feel.
One of the things I think about when I think about this topic, and it does strike me very personally. I don't get pulled over by the cops because I don't look like you guys. But friends of mine do, and it hurts me because I feel like there's barriers that we're just not going to get over. 2 or 3 weeks of protests is not going to erase generations, and that's, it's a bitter pill to swallow. And, what you're talking about, and like being patient with people, and I can't believe the restraint of people, and when I see stuff like this, it really, I get emotional about it, because it's like, I know people this has happened to. This happened to my friends. This, when the church in South Carolina got shot up, I know people who went there, like that could have been them. And when you see this stuff, it's like, I don't know. I think it's great that it's coming out, but it's also, the past few years have been a huge awakening. Yeah. Not just for America, but for the world. Now, John, you're not from here, unless you do a great British accent. So I would assume that this was a problem in the UK as well,
Yes, it is. It has a slightly different face, but it's, so funnily enough, when I am stopped by a policeman here, uh, they almost don't know how to react when they hear me speak. So it almost makes them step back, and then they say, "Oh, you're okay." Okay, and that just seems to be my ticket, as it were. But in the UK, there's more of a pretense about racism. Most white people don't feel that there is racism in England. When I say that, I'm talking in terms of from the political side, from the middle to upper class side. You would ask any of them, they would say, "Oh no, I don't think there's much of that." But again, it's what you're surrounded by. So it's very easy to assume something, and you're not exposed to people who are, disenfranchised, who are in challenging neighborhoods, who are not getting opportunities. There's less than 1% in entertainment of Black people and Latinos in the UK, right? And there's a great article that CNN came out with this morning. It is phenomenal. It describes everything about what's happening in England and racism better than I've ever seen. They literally hit the nail on the head with they did all kinds of tests with thousands of people, and they asked them similar questions, people from different backgrounds, but it's real. But the violence is not as drastic as America. I will say that when it comes to police injustice, it's no way near as intense as it is in this country.
One thing you don't have in the UK is you don't have cowboy culture. You don't have, guy with the 6-shooter lawman. That's, and that, I think that's a lot of what makes up here. I also think it's how, like, particularly police, how they are sort of lionized in media, and how, we have hero cops, and all the hero cops are, shooting machine guns. It's like Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon, or, these images that we have. And it's on some level, we're to blame. The media is to blame. The movie makers are to blame for this. There's a whole host of other topics I could get into, but this is not that kind of show. But I would say, in terms of sticking with media, one thing I loved about your film, about Infamous Future, is it showed a positive side of things. Mm-hmm. A positive side of the hood, and a realism of it that said, hey, the government looks at Brownsville, they look at these different neighborhoods to determine how many walls and bars to put on prisons.
Right.
And how do you stack up against that? Like, already, that every kid has got, 2 strikes against them from the second they're born. And what I said, I think the last time we saw each other, I said to you, the only shame about Infamous Future, about that school, is that it has to exist in the first place.
Yeah.
That they need to have a special place,
But I think it's critical. I think it is critical because the makeup of things in this country, and, yes, we are aware that most, particularly Black people in America, come from the ancestry of slavery, okay? So there's that weight to deal with, okay? But then you've got the other situations where there's so much injustice to the Latino community, all right? I mean, you're seeing it from month to month to year, trying to create divides, right? When, let's be clear, this wasn't a white country, okay? It became a white country at the sweat, blood, and tears and death of Native Americans and many others. So we're not looking at life even with any conviction when these things are put in place to really have more of a civilized nation and a place to live, right? So you've then got to compensate. So how do you compensate? Tell some good stories when everything you're hearing in the news is bad. Tell some real stories when it's fabricated that it's only white people that might tell these stories. I think it's important to tell good stories with white and Black people. I think it's good to tell good stories with white and Asian and Latino people. We've got to make sure that we are conscious of something I did in an article the other day. I called it, we are, of course, in the United States. And if you understand the word that's united, that means all of us together, right? And so we have a responsibility in our consciousness to making sure that we are remaining united, especially when it's for the good and for the greater good of everyone.
And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more on the Contra film series, you can find them on social media, especially the talks are on Facebook. You can also find their website at katrafilmseries.com. And for more of our content, visit us at norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. I'd like to thank Geoffrey Guerrero and John Campbell for joining me, and I'd also like to thank the folks at JMR Rentals for sponsoring this episode. Find out more about them at jmrny.com. And for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.